Hello guys, TKG here for your comfortable LostArk life. In this video, I'd like to cover the recent status and improvements that was live on the LostArk KR, as the KR region update progression are quite slightly ahead than the global, so I thought it'd be great to share some of those infos for your LostArk journey. Now follow me, I'll show you what you need. First, on March 26th, that is this Wednesday in Korea, a new event raid content, 강습, was updated. As the director himself revealed in the previous stream, the newly added raid will be maintained as an event. This limited time raid can be played for approximately 8 weeks, and as mentioned earlier, it is divided into 8-player raid that shares the end contents cap, and a regular 4-player raid which does not share the end contents cap. And the entry item level are as follows. Additionally, progression factor is excluded from this raid update. In addition, it consists of a single gate, and the gold rewards are as follows. Also, one special thing is the newly added treasure chest system. As the director said, this system is a system where you can open treasure chests through the interaction to obtain special reward. This special reward is designed to provide a fairly decent gold reward, and at the same time, if you are lucky, you can obtain a fairly large gold reward. Of course, on hard difficulty, you can additionally obtain relic engraving book. And as the director said in the previous stream, the 4-player raid is designed to be cleared simply through the matchmaking, just like the regular daily contents. Of course, the 8-player raid is also designed not to be too difficult. And this time, this stream can be seen as communication-like communication. In fact, LostArk has not been able to communicate smoothly with users until now, or for several months since the start of Season 3. Finally, they are trying to communicate by directly discussing the current problems of LostArk, which is seen as a positive signal. So while there aren't many changes right now, I think it is nice to see that this stream provided some insight into the direction where LostArk is headed in, and that they're finally doing communication with their players again. The first thing that was covered was the gold-related update. One of the issues that was covered in my recent videos, or maybe even pointed out by many in LostArk community, was the lack of motivation and efficiency to level up. So the problem was that many players were staying at the stable and much cheaper level of 1640 rather than spending a ton of gold and money to get 1680, which is a high item level. So they revealed the plan to nerf the lower tier gold to bring up the majority of users in the lower tier by fixing this unreasonable structure that only stays at 1640. And now with the Wednesday update, gold has been reduced on that low level section. And in the last stream, we were able to hear more of the director's opinion. He said that the reason he didn't block the so-called parenting in the game was because he thought that it was a win-win situation where high-level users helped low-level users, so high-level users could get what they wanted fast, and low-level users could enjoy content without being restricted by level. In fact, since he doesn't recommend this parenting in the game, he said that he thought that reducing the amount of gold supply from low-level raid would be a right direction to reduce its importance more naturally. Because, in fact, if it's much more efficient to just take a boss than to enjoy the contents you want from the beginning, he thought that it would be a very unnatural gameplay. So rather than making structural improvements right away, he said that he would watch the progress of the gold nerf and the easing of the character progression, and then decide on the direction of the future update. Of course, it wasn't just a simple gold nerf. There were also some adjustments to the essential progression factors due to the gold nerf. For example, the cost and material requirements of advanced toning will be reduced by each value. Of course, in Stage 1 and Stage 2. Also, the gold consumption related to Transcendence will be reduced by 30%. In fact, this is the patch note that makes me think that it should have been done a little earlier. In some ways, it is also one of the reasons why I don't want to do LostArk progression factor again. To be honest, I've done everything, but I still don't understand why I have to rely on probability for progression factors again when I just beat the raid. It is also unbelievable that I have to do this again when I'm trying to do something with a new alt. Anyway, there's still a lot of things for improvements in this part, but I think it is really fortunate that at least the gold consumption has been nerfed. And although it was only for a short while, there were some things mentioned about the rigid character progression structures. So as we moved into Season 3, LostArk chose flexibility in character developments, but rather than improving that flexibility, LostArk ended up creating a more rigid structure. A representative example of this is this ridiculous gem system. The price is really high, and since it requires a large quantity, its value and price have increased ridiculously. Because of this, some users feel burdened by the price when making of various characters. So in result, players who are trying to put down this burden of price and pursued only efficiency, that is making multiple same characters to achieve extreme efficiency. In other words, creating a situation where one gem build is used and revolving on multiple characters. So there's a brief comment on this point. In particular, regarding this point, the user community has been continuously requesting that free conversion of gem should be possible even before the Season 3 started. That is, that Annihilation gems and Crimson gems supposed to be freely converted. And now they say they might considering this. In particular, the most noticeable opinion that was that they are considering not to let users consider the process of developing multiple identical characters that are not fun simply for the sake of gems or content's efficiency. Perhaps the fact that they are considering this direction may be a positive factor. There was also a brief comment on balance. As the director himself mentioned, he said that the current balance patch is maintaining the trend of frequent balance patches. However, he said that the timing of balance patches tend to be delayed or brought forward depending on the current update period or its characteristics. However, he said that he has only adjusted the current DPS related matters and that he still feels the need of structural improvements. Therefore, he said that the next balance patch is planned and prepared to structurally improve and modify old classes. He also mentioned other content, which I will briefly cover. First, he decided to lower the HP of the upper Guardian raid. In previous season, Guardian raid used to be the upper content, but now that weekly raid have taken their place, Guardian raid has moved to the daily contests. But you can still see the gap in clear time depending on the situation. In particular, if there is no support, the clear time that does not match the daily is consumed. To prevent this, there will be an HP adjustment for the upper Guardian daily content. The director also mentioned that the solo mode will be continuously updated. He said that since the solo mode increases the settling rate of newer users, they will continue to use the existing solo mode as a stepping stone to release the next solo raid with satisfying difficulty. The option to skip in-raid cutscene will also be added. Why did I mention this? It is actually an issue that occasionally discussed in the Korean regions. In fact, we hate cases where time is delayed because the cutscene is not skipped. So we ask them to display the person who didn't press the skip button, but it hasn't changed it. But now they said they are considering adding this as an option. For example, they are thinking of making an option that forces you to skip the cutscene by adding it as a checkbox, like the option to allow playing the other content in the current party window. There was also an additional opinion regarding cars and characters. In the case of cars, he said they would create various supply sources to diversify the supply. And one of the issues that has been discussed recently is that it is too difficult to see character builds. For example, the process of inspecting whether an appropriate players has the right build and apply the party is too long. So in Korean region, this inspection is currently dependent on offsite. But they said they will update this to an in-game method and build a user interface system that allow you to see the specific characters' builds all at once. And there will also be changes to field boss related issues. For example, they will remove the fact that the health is reset when the field boss leave the designated area. And they will also adjust the clear time, which show a large deviation depending on the character's specific item level. For example, when you do the counter, it will change to give a buff that increase the damage. Also, auxiliary weapon related effect will be updated to be changeable. There was a request to be able to change effect like regular weapons. In fact, it feels like it's been over 6 months since the demand was made by players, but it's a bit bittersweet that they are doing it now. In fact, the community's response to this is divided into several opinions. The community's opinions are generally divided. It's too late to do this. And it's fortunate that they are doing now. In fact, most of the issues that are being to be resolved this time were issues that were raised when Season 3 started, or even before it started. So it's honestly a little disappointing that they are doing now. Nevertheless, it is true that the LostArk was fun to raid in the past, but unlike previous Korean game directors, I think the most impressive thing was the communication skills of the director, who directly came out and communicated with users about the direction of the patches. Of course, it's also true that the LostArk is still well known in Korea thanks to those communication skills. But honestly, I was a bit surprised. Until now, communication with the users honestly was just a show. But now, suddenly, I'm a bit surprised to see them actively communicating without hesitation about the things that the user wanted. That is, the things they have been demanding and insisting on for over 6 months since before the start of the Season 3. And to be honest, I personally think that it is inevitable to guess that the internal indicators have worsened as the game enters Season 3. Still, I think that even now, the fact that they are actively intervening in the problem and accepting demands rather than just sitting back and watching the problems that are occurring, it is a somewhat positive factors. Of course, I think that there's still a long way to go. I still wonder if the process from 1640 to 1680 is really attractive. And still there will eventually come a time when they have to reevaluate the value of various contents, especially the expensive character build factors. Honestly, I wonder if they would actually lower the value of things like gems or relic engraving books to gain flexibilities. And I also wonder if it is already too late. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. And always, thanks for your big support. Hope this video was a little help for your LostArk journey. And of course, if you like my videos, hit the sub for more upcoming infos. I'll come back with more useful infos in the next video.